Hi everyone, Dr. Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist here. As always, thank you for subscribing. If you have not yet subscribed and you enjoy this video, please hit the subscribe button at the end. So today's video is going to be on expressing healthy disappointment. The reality of it is, in relationships, sometimes we're going to be disappointed with how a friend, a partner, a family member shows up or doesn't show up for us. And what's really important is developing a habit of speaking objectively when we're bringing up disappointment in the context of these relationships. Speaking objectively allows us to create or decrease the feeling of threat that can often come when we are expressing these more negative feelings in relationships. A lot of us have abandonment wounds, and when we're told or when we're telling someone that we're upset by, again, an action that they did or didn't do, it can trigger us. It can make us feel defensive. It can make us feel threatened, and it can shut us down. And what that does is it shuts down the communication itself. So I gave some examples that could apply to some context that you might find yourself in that I think would be really helpful. So I'm going to go through these, and then I'm going to explain the two important parts of these statements. So one example: I love you and I'm hurt about what happened. That is a really objective way to communicate disappointment. A second way is, I understand why you did that, and I hope that you can understand why that makes me uncomfortable. Another example would be, I see why that situation was difficult for you, and I'm feeling, and you can insert whatever emotion you might be feeling. I'm feeling sadness, I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling anger because of how that affected me. 4, I hear that you didn't think this would be a big deal, and I need you to understand why it feels like one for me in this moment. And then a 5th example is, this wasn't intentional, I understand, and it brings up a lot from my past conditioning. So 2 things I want to point out. The first is what I'm calling a security statement. So, I love you. I understand. I see why that situation was difficult. I hear that you didn't think that this would be a big deal. I understand this wasn't intentional. That statement can disarm the person that you're communicating. So instead of coming at them in a way that could feel threatening, throwing, a you or you did this or what's going on here, this can set the stage for the communication in a safer way, in a secure way. Because remember, the most important person in this two-way dialogue is the listener. So we're really setting up the listener to hear and to be receptive to what we're speaking. So one way to do that is by putting in some version of a security statement, all of which are probably true. You do love this person. You can maybe understand where they're coming from. You can understand that what they might have done was not intentional. So all of these can come from a very authentic place for you. And for the listener, it can be the difference between reacting defensively and actually settling in to hear what comes next. Second piece of all of this that I want to point out that's just as important, if not more: the objective communication of what we're feeling. This looks different. So here, I'm hurt about what happened. Objective statement. Understand why it makes me uncomfortable. Whatever I'm feeling because of how that affected me. Again, these are all objective statements. This is contrasting what a lot of us do, which sounds more like you statements. You're inconsiderate. You're selfish. You didn't care about me in that moment. Again, the second that we hear, if we're on the receiving end, imagine being on the receiving end of someone telling you what you did or how terrible you are. It's like we're little kids. We put our hands in our ears and we don't want to hear anything further from that. So when you can word what happened, again, very true, right? These are still true statements. I am uncomfortable, right? This event is a big deal for me. This is a problem. As objective as we can be, that again increases the likelihood that the receiver is going to stick around to hear the message. Something that I always want to remind each and every one of you that this takes practice. So for some of you, that might mean actually writing out the communication that you intend to have and practicing it beforehand. Final tip: when I said beforehand, making sure that you're not in an emotionally reactive state, Meaning, if I'm feeling really angry, if I'm feeling really disappointment, if I'm feeling really hurt in a given moment, probably not the best time to make that communication. Because if we do, we might go back into those you statements, into that really emotionally heavy dialogue that could feel threatening to the receiver of the information. So delaying it, giving yourself time emotionally to de-escalate, and then maybe giving yourself time to practice and to write down how it is that you're going to make that communication later, and then just practice. This can go a long way in helping us deepen our relationship, in allowing us to show up more authentically, where we can have these harder conversations, we can feel heard, and we can also allow that others are heard in our relationships too. So I hope you found this video helpful.